Thoughts are racing, spinning fast. Ideas flow, but never last. Waves of wonder, thoughts untamed. Nothing ever stays the same. Rambling on, no straight lines. Welcome to my busy mind. Questions, answers, here they go. Digging deeper, let's start the show.
Welcome to Ramblings of a Busy Mind. Sorry, we were laughing before. We keep going, CJ. There is no cuts here. So welcome to Ramblings of a Busy Mind, episode 10. And you can tell already, we had already fun talking before. This is CJ Jansen with me today. And she is, okay, how to say that? You have so many hats. It's kind of hard. You are a musician, a comedian, a speaker, an advocate for disability, and a event host. Yeah, what else?
Author, composer, performer extraordinaire.
Cool. It's so amazing. We met at one of the networking events with Summer, I believe, or Summit, or Symposium. I've met so many people the last half year that I don't know where to put them. I just know that it's so amazing when you meet some people and you click, right? And your story is a story of resilience, of fighting your way to a happy life, and you're not giving up, and that's amazing to see. So I would love for you to tell your story, your background a little bit, instead of me trying to paste it together and then get it wrong.
I guess there's sort of a standard joke in my world because as a Toastmaster, we're expected to do things called an icebreaker. And when I get up on stage, I say, what does a babysitter, a professional clown, a lifeguard, a paramedic, a truck driver, a scuba instructor, an author, a singer, a composer, a speaker, and a disabled person all have in common? Oh, sorry, and an 18-wheeler driver have in common.
You.
They're all me. They're all the different hats that I've worn throughout the years, a number of different jobs. I do sermons as well on request, and I speak at AA events as well, at roundups. So I guess in life, I've been through a lot of things. Abuse as a child, at the age of 2, or at the age of 7, I was attacked by 3 boys on my way to school, grade 2. And then I watched my mom die of cancer over 13 years, and she passed away when I was 16. So, and then somebody else took up the calling of abuse for a number of years. So my childhood was not pleasant. Mm-hmm. But boy, am I ever strong now because of it. One of the things I learned in life is that as a kid, somebody told me, oh, don't worry, there's light at the end of your tunnel. I promptly told them to F off because there was no light at the end of my tunnel. There was nothing but bleak and blackness. What they failed to tell me was, there's light at the end of your tunnel, but hold on, kiddo. There's a few twists and turns you have to take first, and light only travels in a straight line. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to navigate those twists and turns first before you're going to see that light, before you see that freedom and that ability to breathe and feel confident and move forward to the degree that I am now. And that would have made a lot more sense as a kid for me to have heard that message instead of, oh, there's light at the end of the... because life isn't a straight line. It is a series of hills, turns, twists, trips, falls, and in sundry other things. And so for me, I really struggled in my youth. I was genetically predisposed to being an alcoholic, and my drinking started at the age of 7. And I didn't know I was an alcoholic at that time, but all of the warning signs were there throughout my youth, into my teen years and early 20s, where things where I finally had enough money to be able to buy my own alcohol and things started to go downhill a little bit faster. It's interesting that sort of looking back on those things, some of the lessons that I've learned, some of the things that I saw. But my biggest turning point in life was about 13 years ago. So towards the end of May is my birthday. 13 years ago, I woke up on that birthday and I felt like death warmed over. I didn't know it then, but life as I knew it had disappeared. Reminds me of the song, "Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's
Gone.
gone." And that seemingly insignificant virus, it was probably Epstein-Barr, otherwise known as mono, most likely, all of a sudden morphed into a neuroimmune illness called myalgic encephalomyelitis. And I went from scuba diving 2 to 4 times a day to being barely able to speak 2 to 4 words. And I am about 80 to 90% bedbound on any given day. Now, while I was living in Mexico and working in Mexico, I tried so many different things to get well, to find treatment, to find a diagnosis. It took over 2 years to get a diagnosis. But after a few months, I ran out of time and money. I was forced back to Canada. And even though I wouldn't wish this illness on anyone, that illness probably also saved my life. Because as I got on the airplane to head home, I made a conscious decision that when I landed back in Canada, that I would never drink again. Mm-hmm. That didn't last more than 24 hours, as was you. But within 5 days, I did make it into the doors of AA. And I have not had a drink since that day. So again, over 12 and a half years sober now. And that making it through the doors of AA led me on this amazing journey. It was horrible. I wouldn't wish that, trying to overcome an addiction like that. It's hard. I remember it took me over 9 months to have a single day where I didn't think about drinking at some point during the day. Technically, I did think about drinking that particular day, but I had taken a trip to go to a friend's wedding, and I'd stopped in Alberta to have a family reunion of sorts with the Western family. And we had a gathering. And that evening, it was like at the end of the night, I remember sitting there and it hit me. I was not feeling resentful. I was not sitting there wondering where I could get my next drink. I was sitting there enjoying the moment and the people around me. And I hadn't been able to do that in almost forever, like from the age of 6, maybe, where I wasn't always looking for a taste of alcohol. And I went back into the room and I cried tears of joy because I had made it through an entire day without wanting a drink and feeling like a human. And that was one of the best days that I had. But that was 9 months into the AA process. But it was a gift that I learned to appreciate. As time progressed and as I healed from the alcoholism, going through the 12 steps and starting to release those resentments, etc., there's a whole process in the AA to help you heal and to start loving yourself and get you back on your feet. But I remember when I first walked into the rooms of AA and there was this stupid sign. And it's a saying that they have, and it was attitude of gratitude. And I would sit there and I would look at that thing and I would growl. Like I just like, "Arr." But I kept looking at it. And I don't know why I kept looking at it. I just, "Arr, arr." And then one day it like, wait a second, because prior to that day, it was like, what do I have to be thankful for? I'm sick. Nobody knows what's wrong with me. I could be dying. I can't get the health care I need. I am blah, blah, blah. I had a roof over my head. I could go to a light switch and turn on a light. I could go to the tap and have water. I had a comfortable bed to live in. I didn't have to worry about so many things that we ultimately just take for granted.
Yeah.
When I started learning how to verbalize those small moments of gratitude, that's when I really started the healing process. And I started having experiences. Like if I look out my back door of this apartment, there's this massive tree. If I look to the right, it's nothing but bright sunlight, and that physically hurts me. I'm light, sound, and scent sensitive. But I learned one particular day that if I look to the left on a summer's day or a mid-spring day, that the leaves provide enough shade and the sunlight goes through the leaves and creates this dappled sunlight underneath the tree. And when there's a light breeze, it dances. And I remember sitting there looking at this patch of shadow going, I can look at that and it doesn't hurt. And it reminds me of, the shimmering ocean that had been forced to leave. And I sat there for the longest time just appreciating that moment. And that was a breakthrough day for me in my own gratitude journey. When we're going through our worst days, it's utterly amazing that you can take those worst of times and still make the experience livable. An example of that was when my dad got very sick a few years ago. We had to move him into long-term care. I had to travel 5.5 hours north. I had no vehicle. I had to put out an emergency call to friends. Somebody agreed to drive me up there and to help me with the house, because I was going to have to unpack my dad's house of 50 years. This man had receipts from the 1940s in that house. He does not need the pay stubs from 1956. I digress. Anyway, there was an upstairs, there was a downstairs. I'm in a wheelchair. I barely could make it up the 2 steps into the house. And then I had no place to sleep. I had an air mattress. But what was amazing is because I went in with an open heart, I ended up being able to accept help. My neighbors brought me a mattress with sheets and pillows. I had other neighbors bring me meals. I had other neighbors that helped bring things from upstairs downstairs so I could sort it, and from downstairs upstairs so I could sort it. I made a new best friend. I found so much joy, even when I spent most of my time crying. But when you take the time on those bad days to appreciate the small joys that you do find, the beauty that you find. I was laying on this mattress looking at our sliding glass door. This was in the living room. My mom passed away in that room, okay, towards the end of her cancer life. And I sat there, and it was early spring, and there was this giant bush that was full, exploding blossoms, beautiful white blossoms. And my mom had planted that. And I remember sitting there holding a quiet conversation with her, just looking at the bush, looking up at heaven, and just having that conversation, realizing that we probably had shared a similar moment where she had looked out that window. And though the bush would have been much smaller at the time, that we had shared a moment together. And of course, I'm still crying. I'm still lost in that world. But when I look back at that time where everything was going wrong, we didn't know if Dad was going to live or die. He was in his own world, thinking he was in a a Russian concentration camp. He did not know where he was oriented or at all. And I'm trying to make decisions, and it was, what to keep, what not to keep, what was important. He was moving into a small room. I was lost. And yet, even though it was one of the worst times of my life, I look back and realize it was beautifully sad. Nothing more.
I know that.
It wasn't tragic.
No, and when you can find the little things, just when you were talking about the flowers and the outside, the nature, reminded me at my worst times in burnout, working like up until 2016, what I always were able to appreciate was the drive to work and from work. Because here in Nova Scotia, we have a lot of, it's called dogwood. That's very red. Like even in the winter, you see that red stalk, and then the wild roses have a very bright red stalk. And the other part is I had to cross the causeway every day, twice.
Mm.
So we had dolphins, we had porpoise, we had whales, we had, at one time we had gray whales for 3 weeks, and every time you drove by, you saw them jumping. I never stopped because I was back and forth to work, but there were also sea turtles and sharks at the same time. And then you come to appreciate that little thing, or changing seasons, it's yellow, then in the end it's more like a lilac from the asters and whatever. So all of that, and then you just look at it and you go like, I'm blessed that I live here. No matter
Yeah.
what, I'm blessed that I choose that area to live in, that region to live in, coming from the Bavarian Alps, moving to the Nova Scotian Sea. And that made the day better. Just that little moment of color and beauty and simplicity, right?
Yeah.
Nothing big, but then the gratitude about I'm able to be here where I choose to live. And from there, it moved forward. It was step by step. It became better and better. Best part was to quit my job. That was best decision ever. And yeah, no, I understand when you say, and I understand the saying when you said before, looking at that attitude of gratitude. When you're in your quagmire and you're not ready, you cannot see that. But once you get the point that when your brain actually, and it's been proven, when your brain um, sees things with gratitude, or things you moving forward, you have a goal, whatever, and you think about it with gratitude, your brain actually accepts it as given already, even so it hasn't happened yet, right?
Yeah.
So you're manifesting your own life by being grateful for whatever's coming, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, once I started learning about gratefulness, and I actually started putting terms to what my thought processes were, and that took a number of years. One of the other most important pillars that I teach is about becoming willing to fearlessly fail.
I love that saying.
Yeah, because there is, at no time do you actually fail unless you never try, right? That is the only true failure, is when you fail to try. The most successful people in the world are the ones who have failed often and copiously, because they're willing to try. They're not caring what people think about, what they're doing. They're being their authentic self, and they're doing things out of their comfort zone.
And I
Some of
would
the greatest beauty is found outside, on the far side of fear.
I would say it's not even a fail, because even so you not succeed, you have your learning curve. So you won.
Yes. So I don't use the word fail either. I call it, lessons.
Yeah. Life
I've
lesson.
received a lesson in
Yeah.
life. Because failures, and again in quotes, are actually just the stepping stones to future success. Because guaranteed, you've met somebody that can change the trajectory of your life. You've made like those personal connections. You have maybe learned a skill that seems unimportant today, but can become crucial later in life. You are developing interpersonal relationship skills. You're developing attitudes that are different. So these failures are first attempts in learning. Mm-hmm. And they are just moving you forward towards your goal. Like if you think of a start and a finish line on a race course, right? And you're starting over here. And every day, as long as you're taking one tiny step, you will eventually hit this goal, right? And some days you're going to take a leap and a bound. But most days, these are very incremental steps. And it can be challenging to see that big picture. It can be, you get lost in the details on the day-to-day. But if you then take a step back and go, wait a sec, this is where I started. This is my goal. I have come this far.
Yeah.
You know, I may not have cracked my $5,000 stage yet, but I will.
And sometimes
it's only a matter of time.
Sometimes it needs a sidestep. Sometimes you need the detour because there's something missing on that path. So you take the detour and you go and see and explore. And when you open your mind to all of that being just a journey and an adventure instead of the tunnel that doesn't show any light, coming back to that analogy, then it becomes joy and fun and exciting, and the things that you can discover about yourself, about others, about the things in your world. And all of a sudden it's not that box that you're in that doesn't leave you any sideways or any path for discovery.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden everything is open for you and you have all possibilities in front of you and you can pick and choose what you want to do. And if it's not the right choice, well, then you step back and you take the next one. Right.
And it's interesting that when you do finally get on the right path, things become easier.
It just runs through.
That next step becomes easier and easier. It's when it doesn't mean that when you face frustration that you should stop, but it might be advisable to look at the bigger picture again and go, is this really serving my purpose, my goal, or is this a distraction? Is this something I can come back to later, or is this something that isn't serving me right now? And that's all part of the learning process. And there's no wrong way to do anything.
No,
that's the fun. I am ADHD. I take ideas and just go, and I throw it on the wall. And then other more reasonable people then sort of gather those thoughts into something that might be usable. But I help them think out of the box.
Yeah.
I let them create their box, and then I go, let's play out here. That's fun.
I had a very neat interaction with some of my board members. I'm serving as a board member for CanBeWell, the Canadian Association for Bioenergetic Wellness. And the fun part in that was, like, I've been on the board, I don't know how long, 2016, 2017, 18, 19, I don't know. It's a long time. I've been part of the team before, but when we started having the board meetings, one of my colleagues actually sent me a halo and horns to wear at the same time, because I'm always the one who says, but what? Just think outside the box. Take the other perspective, and just think it through, because that way in the end, when you come out, you're not missing out. You're not missing on when you have to make decisions. Look at both sides, right? And think about what would happen if, and blah, blah, just become the devil's advocate. And I don't do that to annoy people, but my brain is like, okay, but what, when? And I'm never somebody who's stuck on problems. I'm always solution oriented. So if you come up and this doesn't work, I go like, oh, you could do this. but that's why my thought is also what could happen if, right? And then you get the halo and the horns at the same time.
Well, exactly. I went to the dentist this morning, prime example. And every time I go to the dentist, I mention that, it's very difficult for a person in a wheelchair to navigate the
Office.
dental suite that I go to. And I ended up grabbing the manager today. And we ended up having an absolute blast of a conversation. But I explained my need to have a grab bar so that I could move from my wheelchair because I can still weight bear. So I could move from my wheelchair more safely to the dentist chair because it's easier for everybody for me not to stay in this chair. And it's was eye-opening for her. She goes, I had never thought, I didn't know. And I went, exactly. That's why I'm here to provide that information. Because if you don't live it, you don't know it. Right. And that change of perspective was all she needed. And that was a really pleasant conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And it also ties into the third pillar. We've got because living in a constant state of gratitude is my first pillar. The second one is become willing to fearlessly fail. And the third one is find your folks. Find those people who will hold you up when you're too weak to stand on your own.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do 1 and 2, 3 often comes with it.
Place, yeah.
They're sort of those are interconnected things that happen because when you start on your path on that where it feels right, where it's just like, oh yeah, this is where I belong. It's interesting that the people that you have surrounded yourself with in the past, your light starts shining too brightly for them.
Mm.
And when that happens, some of them will try to dim your light. They'll try to tear you down a bit.
Mm.
Oh, that's stupid. Oh, that's never going to work. Oh, that's
Yeah.
la, 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 la. I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Sometimes you have to set those people aside, lovingly set them aside and go, I really appreciate you and what you've done in my life, but I'm moving forward now. And you're going to find that next person and that next person and who are going to see that light and are attracted to it and that want to help propel you forward because they see your value. They see what you're doing and are going, yes, keep going, keep going. You're cheerleaders. And that's important too.
I used
Because go ahead.
I used to be the person who would argue because I had to make my point, right? Brain person. It's just and I think that's mostly all of us who have some challenges, stress, burnout. And I say mental health challenges because basically all of us tie into the same symptoms. But the fun part was all of a sudden realize that you could go and say, I agree to disagree.
Yeah.
And it's fine to disagree. We don't have to have the same opinion. We don't have to think the same stuff.
Yeah.
And then just let it stand there. And then I had some angry people in my circumferences, and they would go like, "Yeah, but I have to win." No, you don't. And if you cannot accept that I have a different opinion than you, then thank you for the talk, and we can be not communicating as much. Just stay away. But yeah, no,
Exactly.
it's interesting to see that, and I find often angry people once they learn that you're not fighting with them about your argument, they start to calm down and they become a different person towards you, not towards the rest of the world per se, but when they and that's again setting the boundaries that to say I don't have to agree with you and I don't have to deal with you.
Mm.
And that was an interesting insight to find that I'm standing up for myself way more than I used to. Before I was fighting and I thought I was standing up for myself. But actually saying I disagree and then stepping away from the whole thing is way more stepping up for myself than anything else.
the amount of energy we expend when we talk to brick walls
Or run against them.
or bash our heads against them, yeah, that's wasted and pointless energy. And whereas when we say, you know what, I appreciate you as a person, I value what you're saying, but it isn't what I believe, and it's not what I understand to be my truth. So though I don't agree with you, um, that shouldn't affect our friendship or our business relationship, but we are going to have to agree to disagree in this area. And I'm sorry that we couldn't find common ground, but let's move forward in a different project or in a different area.
Honestly, I wouldn't even say I'm sorry that way, because it is the fact, and I don't have to be sorry for that, because that would put the other person already in a position of being right.
I use sorry a lot.
Yeah, no, but
um,
think about it. How often do you say I'm sorry for something because it's polite to say it, or it's common phrase to say it? And if you step back and look at it, why do you have to be sorry for something like that? You haven't done anything wrong. I wish
but
it would be
neither have
different
they.
instead of I'm sorry about it, right? I wish we would have the same, but I would never say I'm sorry about having a different opinion than you.
I guess when I say I'm sorry, it's because I feel bad that we can't find common ground rather than you're right and I'm wrong and they're wrong and I'm right. That's it's not. I understand what you're saying, but I'm going to keep saying it the way I say
This
it.
is fine. It's
Not not because not because uh because I am the type of person that emotionally feels the sadness. So I'm sorry, as in I'm sad that we can't come to agreement.
That sounds better than I'm sorry.
And
No,
I can change that.
it's
But
just so
but this is what
interesting.
discussion's about. This is
Yeah.
this is getting those different opinions and those different perspectives. That's awesome in life.
I love that. I love talking to people because there's so much insight, like the tiniest bits that come out of there. And that's why I have no script for Ramblings of a Busy Mind. Yes, I give all of you a questionnaire, but it's more for you guys to learn about yourself than for me to learn about you. And the interesting part is just what comes out in the discussion. Like just now, that said and sorry instead of saying I'm sorry, because honestly, what do you have to be sorry for, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that comes to my
that's
dog.
interesting. Like for me, one of the things that is like a personal pet peeve is when people say, "Oh, I know how you feel."
No, you don't.
No, you don't.
You're not
You
in my shoes.
have no idea how I feel, but I can empathize.
Yeah.
That word, I love that. Oh, I can empathize with that.
Hmm.
It's not sympathy because I don't
Hmm.
want sympathy for
Hmm.
being sick. It's just what it is. But you don't know what I'm going through or what I've been through. When I'm having bad days and I'm laying in bed and breathing no longer feels automatic,
Hmm.
where my body is so exhausted that just taking that next breath doesn't feel worth the energy. Now, my breathing is still automatic, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't feel
Feel
that.
like
It
it.
feels like
Effort.
it requires effort. And I remember laying in bed wishing I could be on a ventilator just for a little while to allow my poor body to fully rest.
Hmm.
You know?
Hmm.
Those are really bad days. Thankfully, I don't have them very often. But if you've never been that exhausted, you don't know how I feel,
Hmm.
right?
And even if
Um,
you have been, you're a different person, you have different experiences. You
yeah,
cannot relate. You can relate and you can empathize, as you say, but
yeah.
you're not in the other person's shoes. You haven't lived their life. You're not their same makeup. And then how can somebody actually presume that they know what somebody else is thinking or feeling or experiencing.
Exactly.
Nobody can, right?
So when
Unless
I
it's not false, maybe that.
when I do give my talks, those are sort of those three things are what I tend to focus on, and I do each one as a like a workshop, a separate workshop. And it's interesting because I teach people how to become joyfully resilient, because when you are in a state where you're having to be resilient,
You're usually never joyful.
well, but you're in a position, you're going between the known and the unknown.
Yeah.
And by learning how to become joyfully resilient, instead of having the massive roller coaster of emotions, I try to make them into smaller waves, manageable waves of emotional change versus the roller coaster. I don't know how many times in my life it's like, please get me off this roller coaster. I just let me catch my breath. And life doesn't always let you play that game. But when we can be in that constant state of gratitude, when we can be, willing to fearlessly fail and have those people around us, um, we can make that much less challenging. And the other thing that I like to use is my personal mantra. I don't know why it happened or where it happened, but a number of years ago, I was having one of those really bad days. And out of the ether, a saying came into my mind, and that is, choose to live joyously within the tempest of adversity.
Mm-hmm.
Choose to live joyously within the tempest of adversity, dot, dot, dot,
Mm-hmm.
that we call life.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm having those bad days, this is what's going through my head is I will say that over and over and over again to help me bring my levels down to a more tolerable, uh, whether it's a pain level, whether it's an emotional level. I can use that saying to help me level out, to find my equilibrium.
Yeah.
And I personally find that one helpful. Do you use any
I
meditation?
usually I have a different background and I can show you because I always get the saying wrong. That's why I have it as a background if I find my cursor. So mine is this one here.
I
Choose
like that.
happy always, everywhere, and anytime.
Nice.
Because that's what I did when I quit my job. Oops, that's the wrong background. Too many backgrounds. I had, I hadn't realized when I was still working, still being employed. I had somehow realized that I was not happy and not in a good position, but I hadn't realized how bad it was until I got a text in the morning from my business partner. Like I was full-time employed, but I had a business partner that I created tea with and all kinds of things. I called her my shit kicker. She got me to study. These days I call her my instigator. And and she sent me a text and she said, "You have become so negative, I have to distance myself from you. I cannot deal with you at the moment."
Wow.
And that's a pretty heavy text to get 7 o'clock in the morning when you're in a meeting with 13 people preparing for, I think it was the fourth or the fifth day of 17 hours feeding 65 people, taking care of 65 people. And I sat there and I read it. And the fun part was before that would have been tears and aggravation and anger and whatever. And I just read it and I went, yes, she's right. Closed the phone, went about my day. And I was lucky that afternoon I had a little bit time in between where I could spend some time with a friend, and we sat down and I told her about that, and I said I realized that every sentence out of my mouth is I hate, I don't like, I don't want. And that from a person that's base nature is so much optimistic and fun and joyous. And I said I have to do something. So there were some obstacles that I had to clear out first. But basically, 4 days later, I quit my job. I gave my
Nice.
boss 4 months time, and I never looked back.
Mm. I had to eliminate the word hate from my life. I won't actually use that word anymore
Mm-hmm.
because it is such a negative emotion.
Mm-hmm.
I used to talk about how I hated Mrs. Barloni. She
Mm-hmm.
was one of my teachers in grade 7 or 8. And she was a bad teacher.
Had
um,
some of
but
those.
yeah. Well, she almost destroyed me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we were away on this special ski trip, went to Saint Donat. It was a French class, and we were practicing all of our French and stuff. And a few months earlier, I had gone to her in tears because some of the kids were teasing me and making fun of me, and I just talked about how these kids were didn't like me because back in grade 5, and this was grade 7 or 8. Back in grade 5, I had stole some guy's cookies, um, and not realizing that his parents didn't actually feed him. But my household was very clean living because of my mom's illness. She was trying to set good examples, and I just wanted some cookies. Um, so anyway, these kids were holding those. They didn't like me because of what had happened in the past. At Saint Donat, this kid lost $10, and she took only about 5 or 6 kids that she didn't like very much, and she accused us of stealing this guy's money. She went through my pads, through my tampons, like opening them to see if we had hidden money. That devastated us.
Mm-hmm.
It crushed us, and it made us even more outcast from the class. The kid found the money like an hour or two later, but instead she had. Anyway, I hated Mrs. Barth. And I carried her in my head and in my heart for over 20 years.
Yeah, been there.
I let her live rent free in my head for over 20 years, carrying hatred. So I will never use those words. The 3 boys that attacked me in grade 2, I hated them. I allowed them to traumatize me for 30 some years, almost 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not 30 years. Um, but when I was going through the steps of AA, part of that was learning to forgive and to release and to see your part in whatever happened, whether, and release the resentments and release that pain. That was so cleansing. I actually wrote a whole speech about it called by, bec- by becoming willing to forgive, I have been set free. And
Forgiveness is for you personally.
exactly.
It's not for the other person. And that's what
Ex-
people don't realize. The only person you can forgive is yourself,
yeah.
right? Forgive for being in that situation, whatever. Forgiveness is always for you personally. It doesn't mean you forget whatever happened, but the forgiveness means you let go of the emotions in the situation, and you start living again, and not letting those emotions and those resentments carry you through your life or whatever you do, because everything will be colored by that emotional lens. Everything will be put in a box or put in perspective by that resentment that you carry with you.
Oh, I had built a fortress around myself. I was not going to get hurt by anybody else. I wore the biggest clothes, baggiest clothes. Anyone who told me, "Oh, you're so pretty," would be told to F off,
Mm-hmm.
because the word pretty terrified me.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely terrified me because pretty equaled target.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty equaled victim.
Mm-hmm.
And for years and years and years. And it took a long time to break that fortress back down again. We all have walls, but I had a brick shit house. I think I missed a lot in life because I had closed myself off in so many ways to protect that little child that had been hurt so badly. And if I look back on today, I mean, with my illness, myalgic encephalomyelitis, similar to fibromyalgia, I have that as well, but to a lesser degree. But they're actually finding that predominantly women develop this illness, and almost all of us have trauma in our life, whether that's a car wreck or whether that's abuse or whatever, a major trauma, especially in childhood. You are predisposed to developing these autoimmune illnesses. And, you know, the issue that you have ends up in your tissue. So that was an interesting thing for me to learn. Like, this whole disability thing has no known cure. It has no biomarkers yet. I think we're on the cusp of having them. But again, with the US and what's going on down there, sadly, all of the funding is drying up. All of the research that was being done, all of that funding has disappeared. And May 12th is a national day for myalgic encephalomyelitis. And there's this group called meaction.net. And this year's theme is SOS, save our, they're going to kill me, save our system, or save our, oh dear. Anyway, brain fog at its best. But the focus is to try to reestablish research and to try to fix funding issues and stuff, so that, you know, in Canada, people with MS, and this is an old statistic, we're getting about $13 per person per year towards research. Mm-hmm. There are more people in Canada with ME than MS, and we were getting less than 12 cents a year per person towards research, because MS has, you take a picture of their brain, there's patches there, you know, it's easy to see. But because we don't have those same biomarkers, we are mental cases, we are misdiagnosed. It took over, as I said, over 2 years and a specialty clinic in Toronto for me to get a proper diagnosis. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of exclusionary tests just to prove that, yes, you were sick. And in the meantime, you're sitting in your bed thinking, oh my gosh, I must be crazy. Maybe this is all in my head. And then I would try to go do something.
Well, the fun part is that it's not in your head. I would say it's in your heart. It's the emotion, right? And we're still not coming from the bioenergetic wellness field, where we work with a lot of clearing the emotion out of the situation and seeing pain gone in a matter of 2 or 3 sessions, or even less, depending on what it is. The world has not seen what can be done yet, because we're too focused on, here's a pill for this. And I'm not putting modern medicine down. It has its value. Anything that's acute and right now, surgeries, inflammation right now at the moment, when you start, then it's there, then it's needed.
Yeah.
But if it's ongoing and chronic, there is always an emotional underlying issue, and that's always neglected from the normal medicine. Right?
Yeah, I don't need antidepressants.
No,
I'm one of the happiest people I know. But yeah, there is mitochondrial malfunction. They know that much. So I start my day at 30% less energy than a typical adult my age.
Yeah.
So I'm like a wind-up toy. I start my day off great. Everything's just fine. And then
I have a friend of mine, her son has autoimmune disease. And having seen over the years what they put that child through with medication because they don't know what to do with it is so devastating. And basically, they don't know what to do. They have no clue, right? So
Yeah.
give him this pill, give him that pill, give him this, and maybe, and as you said, antidepressant. Um,
Unfortunately, for those of us with autoimmune, neuroimmune illnesses, it is let's try.
yeah.
And that's the biggest game. Let's try this. Let's try that.
Mhm.
And sadly, yes, a lot of it does not work. Or what works for one person doesn't work for the other. And it depends on what part of the brain is being affected. It depends on where your pain is located as to what helps and what doesn't. And yeah, it that's a frustrating process.
Mhm.
Um, and I guess that's why I work uh, so hard in the disability sector to advocate and to be on it. Like I'm on the City of Cambridge Accessibility Advisory Council, for example. I'm also putting a show together, my second one ever, called Disability Unleashed. It's a little variety show. And every year I'm hoping that it's going to get bigger and bigger. And just starting with this small variety show, I think we're going to be doing it at a local seniors home. They're offering space to do it for at no cost. And in the afternoon, we'll put on a show for their long-term residents. And then in the evening, we're going to have a ticketed event. And right now, I'm auditioning people for the show. And I'm also looking for artists and authors to display their books so that if people want to buy your book, there's table space for you.
Is
Um,
that are you focusing on disabled people to showcase, or are you focused on people who live with that in their life, being like the caregiver, or anybody? What are you looking for?
I'm looking for disabled performers
Mhm.
and disabled artists
Mhm.
and authors. Um, I hadn't thought about the family that support them. That is a very valid thing for me to contemplate. But from experience, to get work as a disabled performer is challenging.
Mhm.
For me, just getting onto the stage is not possible. Even at this seniors home, there's a step up.
Yeah.
It's not impossible. I have to, have somebody lift my chair up and then
Lift
try
you
to
up.
navigate one step to get onto the stage. As an MC, that's okay. I can do it from the floor, but as a performer, the stage is a requirement in a lot of these places. I get excluded from events simply because I can't navigate the stairs up onto their stages. And that's disappointing and frustrating. But so for me, this show is similar to the last show. The last show I had a disabled dancer. She had an invisible illness. I had a deaf poet and her service dog. I had a blind comedian and his service dog. We had a musician couple that had mental health issues, autism issues, and then I was singing in a trio with mental health issues and physical issues, uh, and it was absolutely beautiful. It was small but mighty, and so this is the second show, and as time goes by, I'm trying to bring in some vendors as well to show some of the disability aids. How many times is there something out there that somebody could change their life and make it so much easier if they knew about it?
I know.
But so many different aids are in small little shops that aren't shown to the world,
Mhm.
and people don't know about them.
Mhm.
And what you don't know, you can't even Google, right? So I'm trying to highlight them, but also to highlight the performers. And if I get the vendors in, then I can pay a living wage to my performers. And that's super important to me, because not like minimum wage. I'm talking about a typical performer wage, a non-disabled person's wage to perform. And each year I want to bring in something more. I want to bring in speakers. I want to make almost like a mini conference. And I'll get there eventually. But right now I'm auditioning people. So if you're living in the Waterloo region in Ontario, you're more than welcome to contact me. And I'm also looking for anybody who would like to be a sponsor, to help with funding or to make a display. But mostly I just want people to come out and to celebrate these worthy, very worthy performers.
You combine the educational part with the celebration,
Exactly.
which is really neat, and it's needed, because I know that if you do something educational with fun, it sticks.
Exactly.
That's the thing. Right?
Exactly. So, I'm in process right now. I am feeling a little over my head. And this comes back to the becoming willing to fearlessly fail. The first show I did, I had no idea what I was doing. All of a sudden, I had the creator, producer, social media guru, et cetera, et cetera. I ended up being the MC and a performer. It was a little bit crazy. Made myself really, really sick. But, I learned so many lessons. Did we break even on the first show? No. Did it matter? No. Did we have an awesome time? Yes. So, this is what I encourage. Like, when I learned in June of last year that July was Disability Pride Month, as in proud to be disabled, I went online and I was like, let's meet some people that look like me. Maybe I can speak. Maybe I can volunteer. And I found nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know it at that moment, but that very day I had made the decision to become the change that I wanted to see in the world. And so I'm continuing to try to push this idea forward, and to make a difference in my region. So, yeah.
You will. You're a powerhouse. That's the thing. It's so funny because I'm just looking at what we all talked about, and we never used the word stress or burnout, but all of that is stress and burnout related, and how you overcome it, right? Which is really cool to see that somebody who faces so much adversity and trouble and can stay so positive.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. When I can make choices, like when I go into the grocery store, I got this little old lady today to help me grab a bag of cucumbers because I was too weak and it was a little bit too high for me to lift off the shelf. She wasn't really any taller than me, but she was standing and could reach her arms up higher, right? And she cackled. She says, I've never felt this tall before.
So you made her day.
I did. I got to make her one of my supermarket superheroes.
Yeah.
And it is really important to me that I can go in with the attitude of, oh my God, I'm going to have to ask somebody again to grab this or that. But instead, I ended up being able to, not yet. Okay, my support workers arrived early. But what happened was then I was able to, I've lost my train of thought. But
you empowered her by making
yeah,
her
I
taller
empowered.
than she was.
I did. She got to have some fun. She got to have a giggle. But I could be resentful or I could be grateful and allow them the gift of helping me. And that's the difference. It's that change in attitude. I mean, if you think about it, do you want to receive a gift or do you have as much fun giving that gift? I get to spread smiles around the world.
I love the idea of offering and then them having the choice to take it or not.
Yeah.
because when we work energetically, we learned that giving means you push it in, you force them to take it. Well, if I offer it and they can decide what they want to do with it, then it's their taking, right?
Yeah.
A little bit of softer approach. But yeah, no, I know what you mean. I have the best conversations when I go shopping with people that I don't know. Just
Yeah.
because there's something and I cannot shut my mouth, so I make a stupid comment or whatever. And then all of a sudden you see the eyes brighten up and the smile come up and they start blah, 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 talk and or it might be just 2 seconds where you get that smile and the chuckle and you leave and everything is fine and you made their day for making them smile for once.
Yeah.
Right. That was an hour.
Yeah, that was a long session.
I knew it would be going long.
Well, we have so much fun together, and
and your story is so interesting. That's the part. Like your story of resilience is so interesting because people can learn from you to see that when you shift your perspective, you don't have to despair. It's up to you to choose happy. It's up to you. It's you have the power and you can take it back, but it's always your choice. Nobody else can make that for you.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
CJ, thank you so much. And I'll post your information and social media on the bottom of the video so that anybody who wants to reach out can reach you. And I wish you all the best with your event and lots of musicians, lots of vendors, lots of artists, authors, whatever. And may that be the best. If I'm in Ontario at that time, I'll come by and say hi.
I would love that.
Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.
All right. Love you guys. Best. Have an awesome day.
Thoughts are racing, spinning fast. Ideas flow, but never last. Waves of wonder, thoughts untamed. Nothing ever stays the same. Rambling on, no straight lines. Welcome to my busy mind. Ideas fade, all the shine. Oh, welcome to my busy mind. Questions, answers, here they go. Digging deep, let's start the show. Questions, answers, here they go.